Frank Herbert's classic 1965 sci-fi novel, Dune, launched a beloved multimedia franchise. But how did this story end? Recently, the first book in the series was adapted into Denis Villeneuve's two-part cinematic saga. The films, Dune Part 1 and Dune Part 2, depict the rise of Paul Atreides, while Dune Part 3 will showcase the fall of the newly crowned Emperor. The third film will take place 12 years later, drawing from Herbert's second novel, Dune Messiah. 2024 has become the year of Dune. In addition to the blockbuster Dune Part 2, the franchise expanded with a prequel, Dune Prophecy. This prequel series takes place around 10,000 years before the original story and explores the rise of the Bene Gesserit sisterhood, the early days of the Carino Empire, and the Atreides-Harkonnen feud. Dune Prophecy answers many questions about the Herbert's universe, but fans will surely be curious about how the story concludes in the 6 classic Dune books. Frank Herbert wrote 6 novels set in the Dune universe during his lifetime. The first 3, Dune, Dune Messiah, and Children of Dune, are the most popular, as they have been adapted into films and TV series. After Frank Herbert's passing, his son Brian Herbert and best-selling author Kevin J. Anderson collaborated to write additional novels that align with the canon. Thanks to their contributions, the Dune series now consists of 23 novels, along with a vast collection of short stories, comics, spin-offs, video games, films, and television adaptations. The first novel introduces the main storyline centered on the Kwisatz Haderach. For centuries, the Bene Gesserit sisterhood has carefully followed a genetic breeding program, selecting the most valuable genetic material in hopes of producing a messiah, a male reverend mother with access to genetic memory and the ability to transcend space and time through prophetic visions. One of the Bene Gesserit sisters, Lady Jessica, defies the will of the Order and uses her abilities to give Duke Leto Atreides a son, Paul, instead of the daughter she was supposed to bear. Lady Jessica's defiance derails centuries of careful planning. The Bene Gesserit intended for Leto and Jessica's daughter to marry Feyd-Rautha Harkonnen, thereby uniting 2 powerful Dune houses and producing the Kwisatz Haderach. But because Lady Jessica deviated from the plan, the Kwisatz Haderach is born a generation too early. For most of his life, Paul tries to resist his predetermined fate, but ultimately he consumes the water of life and becomes not only the Kwisatz Haderach, but also the Messiah of the Fremen. At the end of the first book, Paul leads the desert people and frees Arrakis from Harkonnen and Carino rule. His visions tell him that he is choosing the best path to save humanity, but he is also painfully aware that he is unleashing a Fremen-led galactic jihad in his name. Between the events of Dune and Dune Messiah, 12 years pass, during which the Fremen kill approximately 60 billion people. Paul has now become not only the Fremen Messiah, but also the Emperor of the known universe. He tries to steer humanity toward a path that avoids stagnation or total destruction. At the beginning of Dune Messiah, the Bene Gesserit, the Spacing Guild, and the Tleilaxu conspired to overthrow Paul. A guild navigator, Edric, uses his own prescient abilities to shield the conspiracy from the Emperor's sight. Meanwhile, Paul refuses to consummate his marriage with Princess Irulan Carino, and in retaliation, she sabotages his and Chani's attempts to conceive a child. Paul, knowing that childbirth will kill Chani, is in no hurry to produce an heir. To exploit Paul's attachment to his late mentor, Edric presents him with a Gola, a resurrected duplicate created by the Tleilaxu of Duncan, Idaho. Soon after, Paul is blinded in the blast of a Tleilaxu atomic weapon, a stone burner. Instead of wandering into the desert to die, as Fremen law dictates, Paul proves that his prophetic visions allow him to see without physical sight. At the end of Dune Messiah, Chani gives birth to twins, Leto II and Ghanima, and dies. The twins inherit ancestral memories. Paul's sister, Alia Atreides, becomes their regent, and Paul walks into the desert, hoping that by doing so, the Fremen will finally stop worshipping him as a god. The power-hungry Alia Atreides rules the known universe as regent, while the Fremen raise Leto II and Ghanima. The twins experience prophetic visions. Although Paul has disappeared into the desert, the Bene Gesserit, the Tleilaxu, and the Spacing Guild continue to conspire, seeking control over the spice and Paul's heirs. Lady Jessica realizes that Aaliyah has been possessed by one of her ancestors, her grandfather, Baron Harkonnen. Meanwhile, Leto consumes a vast amount of spice, allowing him to see multiple possible futures for humanity. According to Leto's visions, humanity faces extinction in almost all possible futures except one. Paul once consciously rejected this future, known as the Golden Path, to ensure humanity's survival. Leto merges with a sandworm larva, gaining immense power and physical invulnerability. After meeting the wandering preacher, Leto decides to save his sister from the deranged Aaliyah, who is attempting to arrange Ganima's marriage to the heir of House Carino. When Paul returns to the Imperial residence, Aaliyah's mercenaries assassinate him. Overcome with horror and unable to resist Baron Harkonnen's influence, Aaliyah leaps from a balcony to her death. Leto becomes emperor, leads the Fremen, and takes Ganima as his wife. It becomes clear to all that Leto's sandworm-like skin and other genetic transformations will allow him to live for thousands of years. Leto II prepares to become the God Emperor. While the first three novels by Frank Herbert form a cohesive trilogy, God Emperor of Dune explores much stranger storylines. Paul's son, Leto II Atreides, having transformed into a human sandworm hybrid, rules the known universe as the God Emperor for a staggering 3,500 years, gaining complete control over the spice and the great houses. Leto II becomes a ruthless tyrant. Interstellar travel becomes inaccessible to most people, and humanity stagnates. Technological advancement is forbidden. In Leto's view, halting progress is the only way to prevent humanity's self-destruction. It is important to note that Leto II's reign leads to the extinction of all sandworms on Arrakis. The desert planet becomes lush and green, but this is not necessarily a good thing. Like his father before him, Leto II elevates himself to the status of a god. He appears immortal, though physically, he has transformed into a sandworm, retaining only his human face and hands. The story also focuses on Ganima's descendants, Monio Atreides, Leto's loyal advisor, and Monio's daughter, Siona. Siona plots to overthrow Leto, but ultimately comes to understand the necessity of the Golden Path. At the end of God Emperor of Dune, Leto II dies, but before his death he reveals to Siona that she is the result of a centuries-long genetic program. Siona is the first human to possess a gene that makes her invisible to prescience, meaning that humanity will no longer be dependent on or subject to the whims of prophetic visionaries. Power over the Empire passes to Siona, and a Ghola of Duncan, Idaho. However, the death of the God Emperor triggers the scattering, the dispersal of humanity across the galaxy, and ushers in a new era where computers are once again used for navigation. The final books in Frank Herbert's series focus on the aftermath of the scattering. The events of Heretics of Dune take place roughly 1,500 years after God Emperor of Dune. Humanity continues to follow Leto II's Golden Path, which in theory ensures its survival. Thanks to Leto II, the universe is no longer dependent on spice or Arrakis. However, in Heretics, sandworms and the spice they produce reappear on the desert planet. The scattering has introduced new threats, including the Honored Matres, a matriarchal society even more brutal than the Bene Gesserit. The Bene Gesserit seek the help of a mentat named Miles Tegg, tasking him with protecting yet another Ghola of Duncan, Idaho. They also discover a girl named Shiana, who possesses the ability to control Arrakis' sandworms. Hoping to unite humanity around Shiana, the Reverend Mother, Odrade, trains her in Bene Gesserit techniques. Eventually, Tegg provokes the Honored Matres into devastating Arrakis, destroying the sandworms. Odrade and Shiana, taking one surviving sandworm, flee to the secret Bene Gesserit planet, Chapter House. In the sixth and final novel written by Frank Herbert, the existence of the Bene Gesserit is threatened by an even more ruthless order, the Honored Matres. After the destruction of Arrakis, Reverend Mother Odrade and Shiana arrive on Chapter House and begin breeding giant sandworms. Meanwhile, one of the honored matres, Marbella, defects to the Bene Gesserit and trains in their ways, but in doing so she learns their most valuable secrets. By the end of the novel, Marbella takes control of the honored matres, Audrey dies, and Shiana and Duncan escape from Chapter House. Frank Herbert ended Chapter House Dune on a cliffhanger but passed away before he could reveal the epic conclusion of the saga. His son, Brian Herbert, in collaboration with Kevin J. Anderson, completed the series based on Frank Herbert's notes, which he called Dune 7. In Hunters of Dune, Duncan Idaho, or rather his Gola, Teg, another Gola, and Shiana escape on a refugee ship, fleeing from Marbella, who has taken control of both the Honored Matres and the Bene Gesserit. The ship also carries the last surviving sandworms from Arrakis. As they search for a new Dune, they encounter Golas of characters from the older novels, including Paul Atreides, Baron Harkonnen, and Leto II. Hunters of Dune lays the groundwork for the emergence of a mysterious enemy, so powerful that even the Honored Matres fears it. As the story unfolds, it is revealed that this looming threat is the return of the Thinking Machines, led by Omnius, the machine overlord who was supposedly destroyed during the Butlerian Jihad, the war that took place before the events of Dune Prophecy, in which humanity freed itself from the tyranny of computers. Herbert and Anderson split Dune 7 into 2 parts, concluding the saga in Sandworms of Dune. While Marbella prepares to face Omnius's armada, the Golas of characters from the original novels attempt to resolve unfinished business. At the end of Sandworms of Dune, Paul's Gola declares that Duncan's Gola is the ultimate Kwisatz Haderach. Duncan has been present throughout the entire Dune series, his Golas continuously resurrected and refined. Duncan's consciousness merges with that of the robot Erasmus, forming a bridge between the human and machine worlds. Shiana, now leading a new sisterhood, vows never again to create a messiah. On Caladan, the Gola of Lady Jessica lives peacefully with the Gola of Leto I. On Arrakis, the Golas of Paul and Chaney work to restore the planet to its former state. At one point, Denis Villeneuve stated that he intended to make a Dune trilogy. He is currently working on the final film of the trilogy, Dune Messiah. Additionally, there is an original TV series about the Bene Gesserit Order titled Dune Prophecy, which serves as a prequel to the main storyline and is not directly based on any of the books. Given this, fans speculate that Villeneuve's franchise will conclude with the second book, Dune Messiah, bringing Paul Atreides' story to an end, as he abdicates the throne and walks into the desert. Even if the franchise continues beyond Villeneuve's trilogy, the likelihood of including the non-classic storylines is low. A film focusing on Paul's children, orphaned after Chaney's death, seems unlikely. The franchise already has well-established characters, making a time jump of several decades where these characters would be absent impractical. Some of the strangest elements from the books, such as Paul's son transforming into a sandworm, would be nearly impossible to translate to the big screen. Most likely, the franchise will end with the story of Paul and his sister, Aaliyah. However, those who only have seen the films and view Paul as a heroic figure should prepare for unexpected twists. In Dune Messiah, Paul is likely to become an arrogant ruler, corrupted by power. Yet, aware of his downfall and determined to end the cycle of tyranny by destroying his own legacy, the entire Dune narrative revolves around Paul's rise to godhood and his eventual fall, which will inevitably unfold in the third film. Another adaptation of the Dune universe is the HBO series Dune Prophecy. It is set in the same continuity as Denis Villeneuve's films, Dune and Dune Part 2, but takes place 10,000 years earlier. The series, which premiered in November 2024, explores the origins of the mysterious and powerful Bene Gesserit Order, which, in the films, includes Lady Jessica and opposes Paul Atreides' ascension. Many fans of Dune and Dune Part 2 who have not read the books wonder what inspired Dune Prophecy. The series is loosely based on Sisterhood of Dune, a novel from the Dune universe written by Brian Herbert and Kevin J. Anderson. However, even from the show's synopsis, it is clear that Dune Prophecy differs significantly from Sisterhood of Dune. For instance, in the series, the Bene Gesserit is still a relatively young organization, whereas in the novel, the Order already wields considerable political influence. Prophecy explores the Bene Gesserit's origins from the very beginning, which is evident from the character lineup. The show centers around two sisters, Valia and Tula Harkonnen. Valia appears in Sisterhood of Dune, but she is not a central character. Meanwhile, Empress Natalia Corino, the wife of an emperor and a key figure in Prophecy, does not exist in Sisterhood of Dune at all. Additionally, major characters from Sisterhood, such as Vori and Atreides, are absent from Prophecy. In other words, the series Dune Prophecy only loosely resembles Sisterhood of Dune and is not a direct adaptation. Instead, it is a unique and original story that expands the Dune universe rather than retelling an already existing chapter of its history. And that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Your support means the world to me. Thanks for watching, and see you soon.